Man, this one's a real what could have been situation. This was actually meant to be the pilot for a whole X-Men animated series, following Kitty Pryde as she gets recruited into the team just as Magneto breaks free, with help from the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and the two sides end up clashing over a plan to send a comet crashing into Earth. Unfortunately, Marvel ran into financial trouble right after this was made, and the whole series got scrapped before it ever got off the ground. I know a lot of people probably haven't seen this one, so I'll try not to spoil too much, but I'll say this. The animation for its time was genuinely impressive, and you can tell they gave the roster of X-Men a lot of personality, even in the short runtime. Wolverine, Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler, they're all here, and they all get a moment to shine. My biggest issue is that the story itself is kind of a mess. It jumps from one big action beat to another without spending much time actually building any of it. So if you don't already know the comics going in, you're probably going to be a little lost. Also gotta mention, Wolverine speaking with an Australian accent instead of Canadian is such a strange choice that it takes you right out of it. There was clearly a lot of potential here, and honestly, it's kind of a shame this never became the show it was setting up to be. But as a standalone pilot, it's more of an interesting curiosity than something that fully works on its own.
Oh, it's beautiful.
This is basically the show that Pride of the X-Men was setting up to be, and thank God somebody actually got the chance to do it right. This one follows the X-Men as they take on threats like Magneto, Sentinels, and eventually massive, comic-accurate storylines like the Phoenix Saga and Days of Future Past, all while dealing with the ongoing struggle between mutants and humans. I honestly think this is one of the best superhero cartoons ever made. Cal Dodd killed it as Wolverine, giving him that gravelly voice that basically became the character going forward. And the rest of the cast, Cyclops, Storm, Rogue, Gambit, Jean Grey, all of them feel fully realized in a way a lot of Saturday morning cartoons back then never even attempted. What really sets this apart is how faithful it is to the actual comics. They weren't afraid to adapt genuinely heavy, dramatic storylines instead of just watering everything down for kids, and it paid off massively. The animation itself isn't always the smoothest, but honestly, it doesn't even matter because the writing and voice work carry it so hard. This is one of those shows I can still put on today and have a great time with. And it's crazy how much of an influence it had, straight up leading to the 2000 live-action movie getting made in the first place.
Damn! That shit good!
This one takes a pretty different approach compared to the 90s show by turning most of the X-Men into actual teenagers, dealing with high school on top of learning to control their powers. Cyclops, Jean Grey, Rogue, Kitty Pryde, and Nightcrawler make up most of the core group. And instead of full-on world-ending threats right away, a lot of the early seasons focus more on the kids figuring themselves out, while Xavier and Wolverine try to mentor them. I know a lot of people were skeptical going in, since making everybody teenagers sounds like it could go really wrong. But I actually think it worked way better than expected. The animation is genuinely impressive for its time, more anime influence than the previous show, and it gives the whole thing a different visual identity. Turning Rogue into more of a goth outsider instead of the friendly Southern Belle from the comics was a choice. But honestly, it fits her power set so well that it ends up being one of the better character changes they made. My main issue is that the first season plays it a little too safe, probably because the network didn't want anything too dark this time around. So it takes a bit before the show really finds its footing. Once it does though, especially once Apocalypse gets introduced later on, it becomes a genuinely strong show in its own right. Not quite on the same level as the original animated series for me, but a really solid reinvention of the franchise.
God damn, Jimmy. This some serious gourmet shit.
This one picks up after an explosion destroys the Xavier Mansion and causes Professor X and Jean Grey to disappear, forcing the X-Men to disband. A year later, Wolverine and Beast decide the team needs to be put back together, especially with a government group called the Mutant Response Division, now actively hunting mutants down. This show came out of nowhere for me, and turned out to be a genuinely great take on the franchise. Putting Wolverine at the center as the actual leader, instead of just the fan-favorite side character, was a smart move, and the storytelling here feels a lot more mature and straightforward compared to the cheesier, more convoluted plots from the 90s series. The animation is really well done for its time. The voice cast is spot on across the board, and I like that they give attention to characters who usually get overlooked in other adaptations, instead of just leaning on the same core group every episode. My only real complaint is that some characters, Cyclops especially, kind of get shafted in favor of pushing Wolverine into the spotlight, which feels like a bit of an unfair trade-off given how much the show benefits from everyone else around him. Still, as far as X-Men cartoons go, this is easily one of the stronger ones, and it's genuinely disappointing it got canceled before a second season could happen.
Now that's what I'm talking about.
This one's set a year after Jean Grey's death, and follows the X-Men as they head to Japan to investigate the disappearance of a young mutant girl, eventually running into the U-Men, a cult that's kidnapping and harvesting organs from mutants to build up their own army. I know a lot of people were probably skeptical about Marvel doing an anime take on the X-Men, but I actually had a decent time with this one. The animation from Madhouse is genuinely impressive. They clearly know what they're doing when it comes to action and style, and it's a really interesting change of pace seeing these characters filtered through a Japanese setting and anime sensibilities. I also like that this tells one continuous story across all 12 episodes, which is a nice break from how a lot of the older X-Men shows like to reset back to episodic stuff week to week. My problem is that some of the female characters, Storm and Emma Frost especially, end up feeling a lot more one note here than they usually do, mostly just standing around while Wolverine and Cyclops handle everything. It's not quite as tight as it could have been, and it definitely leans into some anime tropes that not every X-Men fan is going to vibe with. But overall, it's a genuinely fun, different take on the franchise.
It was perfect.
This one picks up a year after Professor X's death, and follows the X-Men trying to figure out what comes next, with Magneto stepping in as their new leader, while dealing with threats like Mr. Sinister, the Sentinels, and eventually a new villain named Bastion. Man, they killed it with this revival. They did every single character so well here, honestly. Cyclops finally gets treated like an actual leader instead of the boring guy from the movies. Wolverine feels genuinely dangerous again. And Gambit, Rogue, Jubilee, Beast, they all get real moments instead of just standing around waiting for their turn to talk. Right in episode 1, you get this incredible scene in the Sahara, where the Sentinels get the better of the team. And then Storm just steps up, turns the sand into glass with lightning, and wipes out the entire army in one massive tornado. It's such a perfect way to establish her as this Omega-level threat right out of the gate. Magneto's arc this season might be one of the best villain arcs I've ever seen in anything. And the scene where he basically shuts down the entire planet, stripping the magnetosphere and knocking out all of Earth's power to stop the Prime Sentinels, is genuinely amazing. It's core, canonical Magneto, and it's exactly why he's one of the best antagonists in any X-Men show. Now Season 2, man, they somehow topped themselves. The first 3 episodes are some of the best television Marvel has put out, throwing the team straight into a massive time travel story involving Apocalypse, young Cable, and Mother Ascani without wasting a single second. And then there's Storm's Solar Storm scene, genuinely one of the coolest sequences whole year. Her declaring, "We are the dawn that breaks his night," while summoning actual cosmic fire from the sun, gave me chills. This is easily one of the best pieces of X-Men media that's ever been made, animated or otherwise, and it's a genuine miracle they managed to bring this show back and make it even better than the original. Well, there you have it, guys, my list of every X-Men animated show ranked. Which one's been your favorite X-Men series so far? And who is your favorite X-Men character? Mine's always been Storm. Let me know down in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe.